Happy Pride. Love is love, they say. Love is love, whatever that means. Love is a nebulous concept. In English, we don't have enough words for what we mean by love. I love my wife. I love my children. I love my community. I love the world. I love my best friends. I love the people I hate. Well, in a theological way, at least. Not the same way I love you or my children or my wife. Lin-Manuel Miranda, a popular playwright and composer of Hamilton, wrote this "Love is Love" as a poem. In it, he said, "Love is love is love is love is love." And he did it after the Pulse shooting, where a gay nightclub in Orlando was attacked the night before Pride. And so "Love is Love" became a kind of slogan for the LGBTQ movement. Okay, but forgive me for saying so, I've always found it a little bit weak. Love is love. It's kind of a bland statement you'd find on a t-shirt not to ruffle feathers, or sitting next to your live, laugh, love poster. Not offensive by any means, but certainly not saying too much. I mean, I think Miranda was talking about romantic love, right? As in straight love is the same as gay love. And maybe it is, and maybe it's not. If you've been in love more than once, as I have, you know that it's not always the same anyways, and yet it is all love. Whether you fall in love with a man or a woman, which I have, both, or a non-binary person, love is love, right? The problem is with that statement, though, being LGBTQ+ isn't about love, really, is it? If it was, maybe our fight would have ended with marriage equality. But we know that it's far from over. We've seen that very intensely this year. No, being LGBTQ is about identity, fundamentally. It's about not following the gender norms our society has set out for us. That's what binds this group together. Being straight, for example, is an expected gender norm. It's called compulsory heterosexuality, and all of us, straight or not, experience at least some pressure in this way to be straight. Some feeling that we couldn't possibly be queer, some push towards that heteronormative lifestyle. And if you're queer, if you're LGBTQ in any way, you've had to come to terms with the fact that you are not following these norms that are expected of you. Even if you had affirming parents or an affirming faith community, the world says straight is the norm, and it also says men will act this way and women will act this way, and if you aren't following that in any way, if you aren't following what is expected of you, you are not following gender norms. You are shifting away. And that is a thing that unites LGBTQ people, but actually it unites a lot of us. A lot of us don't follow gender norms. In some ways, we are all not conforming to what society thinks we should be, based on what sex the doctors proclaimed us to be at birth. But right now, in our country, right now, and in our world, there's an attempt to split these things off, an attempt to break the letters of LGBTQ apart, to accept perhaps that love is love as long as you're born a man and stay one, or born a woman and stay one, as if anyone is born fully formed. That this kind of defying norms is not okay, that this kind of defying norms, this love is love, this gay love defying of norms, is okay, but only in the narrowest sense of the word. But those of us who aren't simply gay, for those of us whom queerness isn't about sexual orientation, but about something more, about gender identity, we are being made the enemy. And make no mistake, this is a deliberate attack on the part of the right, who know that the best way to win is to find a scapegoat. And it's no longer in fashion, perhaps, for that to be LGB people, because love is love, because perhaps the fight on same-sex marriage is lost for them. But there is an even smaller, perhaps less understood group for whom love is love doesn't work, for whom the threat of breaking open our societal rules of gender can be used to scare and to get people to vote and to break apart the LGB from the T. And what's more is that gender identity is something we often grapple with as a people a whole lot earlier than sexual orientation. And so now we have kids in the mix, and not just the children of LGBTQ people, and not even just teenagers, though it certainly impacts them, but kids who are identifying as a gender as different from what they were born as. So today, in honor of that, I wore my Protect Trans Kids t-shirt. Because it's scary. Be hard-pressed to imagine there's a trans person in your life who isn't scared. I know I am. And no love is love slogan is going to make me feel better. Because it's not about love. Well, it's not about that kind of love, at least. This is the kind of thing that happens when a historically marginalized group gets more power. What we've been seeing is part of a larger movement that perhaps began way back in the 80s, but really picked up speed in the backlash against Black and Indigenous and people of color, in part due to this reaction of having a Black president. And over the past 10 years, LGBTQ plus people have made huge strides. Same-sex marriage became legal in the whole country. But the backlash is hitting trans people specifically in deeply painful and dangerous ways, in a way that impacts adults and children and families, that's causing people to be refugees in their own country. I've been doing a little bit of work with people in these states over the past few weeks where the laws are the worst. Like in Florida, where there's a loss of gender-affirming care, where it's getting canceled, where children aren't getting access to what they need, and in Texas, where transgender people could have their children taken away simply because they're trans. Many of these people are trying to leave these places for their own safety. There's a lot of fear and desperation, and no matter how scared I might feel, people are actually experiencing the real-time effects of these laws. It feels like this subset of the LGBTQ plus community is deeply under attack, in a way that I haven't seen in my lifetime. And it's because we are, and it's because we are. And though legislation seems for now not to be hitting us here in Massachusetts, we have seen some moderate attacks from individuals, even here in Malden, where our rainbow crosswalks were painted over twice, where someone threw a soda can at the end of the Pride flag raising. And perhaps worst of all, a prominent city council member and a prominent city community member and former city councilor posted on the Malden Politics Facebook page yesterday about the Porch Fest Drag Me to the Park event. If you have children, you should be aware that the Porch Fest shows at Roosevelt Park will not all be family friendly. It's beyond me that the city is not making it known that they've okayed a drag show for the kids. Malden is clearly falling off a cliff beyond pathetic. You know, I think it's the best place to bring our children. And this isn't only in Malden. There's an uptick in the ways that queer people are being treated, especially those who are transgender, non-binary, or gender non-conforming throughout the country. But here's the thing about the LGBTQ community. It's always stronger when it sticks together. I'm reminded of the 1980s and 90s at the height of the AIDS epidemic, a time when gay and bisexual men were sometimes forced out of the closet for contracting HIV, and who were left dying, not being touched by anyone, being left by their families because of their sexuality. It was a time when the government refused to acknowledge that there was even an epidemic, a public health crisis, because of the people it was impacting. And while the disease was spreading through the community of gay men, did you know who it was who was there to support them? It was the lesbians. They were the ones that nursed them back to health. They were the ones who came in and were the family for the gay men. They were advocates for them. Lesbians, by and large, were spared from the direct impacts of this epidemic. And so at a time when they could have turned their backs, they didn't. They put themselves directly in the line of fire by associating themselves with the ill. And they wouldn't let themselves be divided. We are stronger together, they said. That solidarity is something our movement needs. What would it look like to be in solidarity with the whole community, to not let them divide those letters up, to understand that to add more letters, more identities, only makes us stronger? Love is love. Here's what love means. Cornel West famously said, "Justice is what love looks like in public." Love is love. Here's what love means. Side with love, the name of our Unitarian Universalist public advocacy campaign that seeks to harness love's power to stop oppression. Love is love. Here's what love means. We say in the vision statement for this church that we aim to bring our love beyond these walls. Love is love. Here's what love means. Our new principles and purposes aim to put love at the center of all we do. Love is love. Here's what love means. Love is a verb. It's what we do when we think about justice being love in public. It's what we do when we side with love as Unitarian Universalists. It's what we do when we bring our love beyond walls. It's what we do when we choose to put love at the center of all we do. It's a verb, not a feeling. It's an action that comes before that feeling. Love is love. None of these statements are about romantic love, gay love, or straight love, but the love that unites us, that crosses divides, that reminds us that we are here to create a better world for all of us. And love is the power that reminds us to do that. It's not about romantic or sexual love. When I hear all of these statements about love, I'm reminded of the queer kid in Florida who has nowhere to turn, whose teachers won't use the right pronouns, who feels alone, and how I love them. When I hear these statements about love, I think of the adults who are being denied medical care, losing their jobs, and being the targets of hate crime, and wanting to leave where they are, and how I love them. When I hear these statements about love, I think of the lesbians in the AIDS epidemic showing up for those they didn't know and calling themselves family, and I love them. When I hear these statements about love, I think about those in our community who need to hear that they are not alone in their identity or their struggle, who need to hear that they are loved. And I think about how all of us have needed that kind of love, that kind of support from people we don't know, in order to thrive, to succeed, and sometimes even just to survive in this world. Because we are better together than we are apart. We are stronger when we hold on to every last one of us. And perhaps in that way, love is love. Love is a powerful statement. Friends, you have shown up for me, and I will show up for you. Love is love. Perhaps it's not so bland after all. For love is the most powerful force there is. It is the most powerful action we can take. Let us practice that love together. May it be so, and let us say together, Amen. Amen.